This is Razzball Radio on the Fantasy Sports Network. Welcome to Charlotte, North Carolina, a beautiful city. I'm glad I got to discover it. I'm here with Dave McKay from thefantasysportsbrain.com. Dave, welcome to Razzball Radio.
Thank you, and welcome to the Queen City, Charlotte, North Carolina. Nothing could be finer than football in the Carolinas, baby.
I love that. Fantastic. Now, you do a lot of fantasy stuff. Give me a real quick hit on some of the stuff you're doing.
So I got my home base, thefantasysportsbrain.com, like you mentioned. I'm on Twitter at TalkToTheBrain, so you can reach me there. And you can find me on other things like the RotoWire magazine. I'm on different websites like FantasySmackTalk.com and some other ones. So I'm around.
Perfect. And today you're going to talk Carolina Panthers
Absolutely.
with me. All right, so what we're going to do is we're going to go through this, like we've been doing all the team previews in all the cities. We're going to cover the Panthers today, and we're going to start obviously with the quarterback, Cam Newton. And I have been stumping all year that Cam has been underrated all fantasy draft season for a lot of reasons, because depending on how your scoring system works, he was a top 5 or top 6 quarterback the last 2 years back-to-back, and now his ADP right now is 9th, but I'm seeing him in some places ranked 11th or 12th. They're blaming the receiving core. I'm not buying that. The guy's turning 25. What's your take on Cam Newton this year?
Well, there's no badder man at the quarterback position than Cam Newton, and he has been top 5 in fantasy the last 3 years in a row. And in my opinion, his receiver core is not worse than it was last year. I think a 32-year-old Jericho Cotchery is at least as good as a 35-year-old Steve Smith. He had 10 touchdowns last year, maybe the most untalked about, unknown, anonymous, or double-digit touchdown season in history.
No, I'm with you on that because, and you know what, to that exact point, I think you could argue that they're actually more versatile right now. And we haven't even got to Kelvin Benjamin yet. We'll get to him in a minute. Yep. But Cam Newton, doesn't he just have to naturally progress?
I think he does, although the problem is his if you look at his rushing statistics, that's the thing he kind of hangs his hat on. That's what gives him the big roto value, right? But his numbers have been going down the last 3 years. Even though he led the league in rushing yards and rushing touchdowns as a quarterback last year, his numbers have gone down each of his 3 years in the league. So I'm a little bit concerned about that. His offensive line is not quite what it was last year, and his receivers lack a little bit of that speed to stretch the defense. So I just worry a little bit about, are there going to be running lanes for him? Is it going to be clogged up inside as they kind of crash the middle on defense? So a little bit of nervousness there on Cam Newton, but he still should produce as a starter for you.
You know what? And if I was going to worry about something, it would be the offensive line. I think it's going to actually be one of the top 5 worst lines in football, which is terrible because the defense is going to be so good. They'll keep other teams off the field, give Cam more opportunity. I love Cam Newton. I think in terms of physical tools, he might be arguably, just in terms of pure raw tools, because he is still raw, I think, he might have the best tools in the NFL. Interesting guy to watch. Where do you think he winds up in terms of quarterbacks this year for fantasy purposes when it's all said and done?
Yeah, I think he slips a little bit, but I think he's still got a really strong floor because of the rushing ability. I mean, he's built like a truck, that guy. Even with he's had an ankle surgery in the offseason, but that doesn't really scare me. He looked a little bit tentative, a little bit tight at the beginning of last night's game, but he loosened up and he warmed up. He started throwing some strikes over the middle to Kelvin Benjamin. He looked better as the game got on. So I think he'll be okay this year. I look for him maybe slip a little bit, maybe 7th, 8th, 9th best quarterback in the league, but I still think a viable fantasy starter.
Yeah, absolutely. Okay, let's talk a little bit about the running backs here. And this has been a source of frustration for fantasy owners for years because when he's healthy, Jonathan Stewart looks like a star. If D'Angelo Williams got the reps that he probably would get on most teams, he could be a star. Break down the running back position for me.
Yeah, so a lot of times we talk about running back by committee, and there's 2 guys, and it hurts the value of both. And then some places they got a 3-headed monster, right? And that destroys the value of running backs on those teams. In Carolina, I would contend it's a 5-headed monster. You got D'Angelo Williams, you got Jonathan Stewart, you got Mike Tolbert as the fullback taking goal line touches and short yardage, Cam Newton leading all quarterbacks in rushing, plus you got Kenyon Barner in his second year. I think there's 5 guys that could see touches this year, and all of them are going to see their value cut. But I do have a good note on D'Angelo Williams.
Tell me.
So we think about D'Angelo Williams as this kind of elder statesman, this old guy that gets hurt a lot, he's not available a lot. He's left Jonathan Stewart for the injuries the last few years. He's played in 16, 16, and 15 games each of the last 3 years and averaged 805 yards per season, right around 800 yards each of the last 3 years, and 6 touchdowns rushing receiving. So he's not what he was back in 2008, back in the olden times when he was gaining 1,500 yards and 18 touchdowns or whatever it was that year. He's not that guy anymore. Fine. But he still is an 800 yards, 6 touchdown kind of guy. And for me, if you reach for a kind of an upside guy as your RB3, to come back and get D'Angelo Williams as your RB4, I think is brilliant because he can fill in those gaps for you if one of your top 3 falters.
Okay, good. That's some good arguments. Okay, so you mentioned Cotchery last year with the 10 touchdowns. Jason Avant is here now as well. Ideally, you don't want to rely on either of those wide receivers for fantasy purposes unless you're in the deepest of leagues, correct?
Yeah, I think so. I mean, Avant kind of defines journeyman to me. As is Cotchery. I mean, talk about olden times. He used to be a regular 1,000 yards a season kind of guy. Last year, what was it, 46 catches and a little over 600 yards, something like that. But he did have the 10 touchdowns. So it makes me believe that he's got some elusiveness, and when he's paired with a good quarterback like a Ben Roethlisberger or a Cam Newton, maybe he can still make magic happen. So he's going to get a lot of opportunity this year, as is the guy I think you're going to talk about next, Kelvin Benjamin.
Kelvin Benjamin, and I'm excited about this guy. And when the draft happened, there was all, the pundits saying, this guy is raw, and he is. But I'll tell you this, in terms of raw talent, this guy is a specimen. He had against that Bills that unbelievable catch where he stumbled at the 5-yard line and extended his massively long, they're like Kevin Durant long arms to scoop in a touchdown. Yesterday, he actually went, I don't have it in front of me, but he had 2 catches for, was it
41 yards. I think it was 24 and 17, 2 catches. They look pretty decent.
Yeah. The one over the middle he had, that was, first of all, that was a bullet from Cam, and that was a great reception over the middle, in stride, like you just said. Kelvin Benjamin, I think, not only is going to be a huge help for Cam Newton this year, I think this guy might be ready.
Well, so I have misgivings about Kelvin Benjamin. I'm of two minds. I think like a lot of people are. Here you got a guy with a 6'11" wingspan, which I'm not sure that anybody in the entire NFL has a wingspan that's 7 feet. So he may have the biggest wingspan, the biggest catch radius of anybody in the NFL. He's got elite size at 6'5", 250, or whatever he is. He's got an elite opportunity with one of the better quarterbacks in the NFL, Cam Newton, as ostensibly his number 1 wide receiver, right? But he had middling production in college. He dropped a lot of passes. I think he caught 57 out of 105 targets at school, and he's got mediocre speed. I think he ran a 4.6 or 4.7 at the combine. So here you got a guy that's not an elite athlete. He had a 32.5-inch vertical, so he's not a leaper. He doesn't use his body particularly well, but with the opportunity he has and the size he has, and some of the things we've been seeing in the preseason already. Hey, you never know. He's worth, what's he going, the 13th or 14th round?
Right now, his ADP is the 46th wide receiver off the board, right by Cecil Shorts, Cooper, and Bo. You know what? I want to come back. I want to talk a little bit more Panthers with you right after this. This is Razzball Radio on the Fantasy Sports Network. We'll be right back.
I was never one for traditional dating, which is why I like to meet guys on ArrangementFinders.com. Arrangement Finders puts a twist on dating that works so well, they guarantee you'll find a girl. That's right, guarantee. Sounds too good to be true? Check out these girls on ArrangementFinders.com who are looking to date. She's hot. She's hot. Okay, her, not so much. Anyway, it's free to join. Go to Arrangement Finders and meet girls like me who know what you really want.
Welcome back, Razzball Radio on the Fantasy Sports Network. Still here with Dave McKay, and we have so much Panthers stuff to go into. This is going to be a very fantasy-relevant team. We've talked about the quarterbacks, running backs, wide receivers, but now let's talk about tight ends. Greg Olson, not a sexy pick, but he's very, you know what? He's arguably, until Benjamin develops, and you and I had a little debate on that, but he is Cam's safety blanket. He is a very serviceable, quality tight end, right now going as the 7th, 8th tight end on the board. What do you think about Olson this year?
He's fairly valued. I think he's going to be about the 7th or 8th best again this year. He set career highs in receptions and targets last year. He had 111 targets from Cam Newton last year. And I think with the status of his wide receiver core in Carolina this year, I think there's probably that number's probably going to go up. And you might see his 73 receptions go up, and with it, maybe his touchdowns too. So he might even peak up into maybe 6th best, 5th best.
He's kind of a poor man's Jason Witten.
Yeah, well, he could be. I don't know if he's going to get that number of receptions, but he's going to get plenty of targets, and he might be the number 1 pass catcher in Carolina this year. So yeah, he's definitely good value, I think.
Okay, now the Carolina defense is outstanding. This is a high-quality unit. I actually think, of course, everyone tells you don't draft a defense till the end, and you shouldn't. Don't do that. But I will say this. I think right now if I have to put a nickel on it today, it might be the best defense in the NFL with Ron Rivera there. Take me through that.
Okay, well, that's a bold statement. I don't know if they're going to be number 1, but they're going to definitely be a viable starter for you. And they led the league in sacks last year. We'll see if they can do it again. They lost a couple pieces, but nothing big, right? I think that most of the core is still intact, and it's still a really solid defense with a great opportunity there. And with the way that the offense, I think, is going to be kind of squished together and kind of try to do a ball control, short passes, a lot of running the ball like they did last year, you're probably going to see that defense in tight games a lot. So they're going to keep the points allowed down pretty low as well. I think they led the league in points allowed and yardage allowed last year as well. Or they're second, I think, something like that.
Regardless, it's a really tight unit and one that I would grab this year. And you know what? I understand why you think that they might not be at, the top defense, but Seattle's going to take a step back. San Francisco's going to take a step back. Cincinnati, let's see, if they continue, but they've had a couple guys banged up. So I think there's a chance Carolina could actually come out and be the top unit. It's not crazy. So I've also been saying Jacksonville might be the top defense this year. You're laughing at me,
well, their offenses can't get off the field either, right? Or can't stay on the field. Their defense can't get off the field. But I think one of the reasons why you don't take defenses until late is because you can't really predict them so well. I mean, you can predict them better than you can kickers, that's for darn sure. But you can't necessarily know how they're going to work throughout the whole season, right, over the course of 16 games.
Yeah, no, absolutely, I'm with you. This is a good team, though, for kickers because, again, if they're not able to pound it into the end zone, and, of course, with that good defense, could be a good year for the kicking game.
Well, that short yardage running game that we talked about, it's really Cam Newton. I mean, they've got Mike Tolbert as their fullback, and he might be able to punch it in once in a while. But I fear that they won't be able to convert a lot of those short yardage down, goals to go, or even down in distance farther out in the field. So they probably are going to have a lot of field goal opportunities. So it probably is a great opportunity for the kicker.
Okay, absolutely. So my sugar daddy of the day brought to you by ArrangementFinders.com. The Carolina Panthers player that I think is going to grossly outperform their average draft position. You know what? I'm saying Carolina defense. I think for where they're going right now, they're going as the 8th, 9th, 10th defense off the board. I think that they are going to grossly outperform their ADP. Cam Newton's got a shot at that too. I like the Panthers this year. Call me crazy. I like them. Now, one thing that is crazy is trying to collect your league fees when you commission. It's such a pain in the neck. You think I got a pain in the neck from driving 7,000 miles? No. Bigger pain in the neck is being commissioner. Use sportsvault.net. It costs you nothing. They collect the league fees for you. They redistribute them for you. It is so easy. No catches, no gimmicks. Sportsvault.net. Okay, we're going to be back. Lots more to cover here in the Queen City, Charlotte, North Carolina. Razzball Radio, Fantasy Sports Network. We'll be right back. Welcome back to Charlotte. Welcome back to Razzball Radio, Fantasy Sports Network. And it is like an all-star game here for the draft we have tonight, because right now with me is Michael Rathburn, who's helped put this together from RotoWire. Michael, welcome to Razzball Radio.
Thanks a lot, man. Glad to have you here. And we got kind of a pros versus Joes. We got guys from RotoWire, football guys, Number Fire, Fox Sports, you name it. We got everybody in the city here.
And this is crazy. This is like, because when you actually get together to do an experts league draft, it's usually online. It's rare that you actually get this kind of group of guys together at the same time. There's going to be lots of tweeting tonight, I got a feeling, because this draft, I'm really excited to see how it goes. We're at Duckworth's in Ballantyne. Ballantyne, by the way, beautiful neighborhood in Charlotte. If anyone ever wants to move me here to Charlotte, I might be okay with that. This is one of the nicer cities that have all been great, but this is a really nice city. So we're at Duckworth's, great selection of tap beers, and they're going to host us for our draft tonight. So Dave McKay and I were talking earlier about some of the things happening with the Carolina Panthers. I know you're around. You caught some of that. Was there any points in particular, Michael, that you want to kind of take a stab at?
Well,
anything you hated?
I'm not a big Cam Newton fan this year, and I am worried about the ankle. And he hasn't really been out there, and I think that's going to hinder his running. I think that early on in the season, they're going to be very conservative with him running outside the pocket, and I think that's going to have an impact on the offensive game plan. So Newton is a guy that – now, here's the thing, is normally Cam would go off at like 5th, but his ADP is dropping, so he's starting to drop around 9, 10, 11. I actually think he's an okay value at that spot, so that's where I have him landing. So I think you can still draft him and be okay as long as you take him around 9, 10, 11. I just wouldn't reach for him in top 5.
All right, I'm going to throw you a curveball right now. So I've been eating great food across the country. Now, unfortunately, probably about 80% of what I've been eating is truck stop food. I don't know if you can tell. Do I look bloated? I feel bloated. But I've got to, in some cities, gotten to eat some really cool thing. What would be, if I have one day in Charlotte, oh, wait, I do. What is the one thing that I need to eat? What is the one authentic North Carolina, Charlotte thing that I'd have to get my mitts on while I'm here?
Well, I'll tell you what. Duckworth is known for their wings, and they have these wings that are, I think they're like bold and gold, or they won like these awards, and the bold and gold wings are by far the best wings that I've ever had. So I tell you to definitely get those.
Come on, man. I mean, Really? You're gonna tell me wings, man? People I was expecting biscuits and gravy.
I'm only been here a couple years, so I'm not really a native. But I will tell you, it seems like fried pickles is everywhere. So I would say definitely try fried pickles.
Okay, I don't like pickles, and I apologize to all the cucumber farmers out there. I love cucumbers, but I'm not a big pickle guy. But yeah, I've been seeing that on the road. Tons of places are like, hey, man, fried pickles. If I eat anything else that's fried, although now I kind of feel like I have to try the wings here tonight, Michael, but if I eat anything else that's fried, I might just burst right on the seat.
With the wings, you can get Carolina barbecue sauce, which is mustard-based, and it's unique to the area. So if you want to go that route, you can go that route.
See? Okay, now we're bringing in some of the local. Okay, guys, if you play daily fantasy, and you want to do it at DraftKings.com. Enter promo code Razzball when doing that. We're going to be playing games all year long. Also, too, keep in mind, lots going on. If you need your rankings, you can get them at Razzball.com. Click the icon that says football. That would help. I'm Nick Capozzi, NickCapozzi. Michael, what's your Twitter handle?
At Fantasy Wrath, RATH.
And don't mess with the Wrath. This is Razzball Radio, Fantasy Sports Network. We'll be right back with the Wrath again right after this.
I was never one for traditional dating, which is why I like to meet guys on ArrangementFinders.com. Arrangement Finders puts a twist on dating that works so well, they guarantee you'll find a girl. That's right, guarantee. Sounds too good to be true? Check out these girls on ArrangementFinders.com who are looking to date. She's hot. She's hot. Okay, her, not so much. Anyway, it's free to join. Go to Arrangement Finders and meet girls like me who know what you really want.
Welcome back to Razzball Radio on the Fantasy Sports Network. Still in Charlotte, still with my man Michael Rathburn of RotoWire. Michael, let's talk about some of the news that's happening today. The Bears right now looking potentially at Josh Morgan as the number 3 receiver. And the only reason the number 3 receiver is interesting in that scheme, obviously, is because of how prolific it was last year. And if anything were to happen to Brandon Marshall or Alshon Jeffrey, touch wood. There's a tree over there. Someone hit it. That third wide receiver could become a number 2 receiver. Even playing out of the slot could be really interesting. What are your thoughts on Josh Morgan, especially since they signed Santonio Holmes?
Yeah, I wouldn't recommend Josh Morgan regardless of whether or not the opportunity is going to be there. I think that the talent usually prevails. And, they're going to take a flyer on Santonio. And Santonio's got something to prove. This is a guy who, helped win a Super Bowl in Pittsburgh, didn't really do well in New York, and kind of bounced around a little bit. So I think Santonio's got something to prove, and that would be the guy, if you're looking at deep leagues, 14-team, 16-team, that might be a guy you want to just keep an eye on. Me, personally, I think what will happen is if one of those guys go down, I think you're looking at Martellus Bennett as being the recipient of the increase in workload. So I think Bennett would be a huge upgrade there. And then you got to remember, Forte does catch a lot of balls out of the backfield, and maybe Kadeem Carey gets more touches on the field. So I think that the weak, wide receiver 3 there really, I think they'll just distribute the ball in other areas where the talent is.
Okay, absolutely. Now, Gronk, I can hear a little bit of mass in your accent. Gronk has graduated to 11 on 11 drills, which is great news if you're drafting him. What's your take on him right now? Because let's just say he wasn't, turning into the $6 million man with all this bionic gear on. If he was healthy, I think he's probably the number 1 tight end in football. Then you can make a debate for that. But my point is, where are you comfortable taking him this year?
Man, Gronk is a guy that I just really don't want to have any part of, only because I think people are forgetting about the fact that this guy had an injury history in college. And, you got to remember, he was out for an entire year at Arizona, and then he came into the NFL, and he's been consistently hurt. And these are injuries where this is a very big frame. This guy's got a huge frame, and we're seeing that, certain guy body types have a tendency of breaking down a lot.
Are you staring at me when you're saying that?
No, you look pretty good. But I'm just worried about that body type, the injury history. I don't think it's worth it. I mean, look, if he drops to round 4, round 5, and you're in a 1-point PPR, and you're in a situation where you can flex a tight end, I think all things have to kind of line up in order for you to take a shot on Gronk. If you're playing in a high-stakes season-long fantasy league where you really you're playing against thousands of people, that's where you probably want to take a shot at Gronk and just hope that you hit a lottery ticket.
Yeah, absolutely. Come a little bit closer here. You're too handsome to be that far away from me. Okay, Bishop Sankey. Some guys love him this year. I don't. I mean, we did the Dallas draft. Ryan Hodge of Project Roto at Roto Hobo, his stuff is great. but he took Sankey in the 3rd round. He's already having some ball control issues. Whisenhunt isn't that worried right now. In Dynasty Leagues, I'm taking Hyde over Sankey. It's not even close. But where are you on Sankey this year?
I'm actually in the Sankey camp. I do like Sankey, and I think that there's a lot of hate towards him right now. And you got to look at the offensive line in Tennessee. The offensive line is very good. I'm not afraid. Sean Green, to me, that doesn't worry me at all. And look at what Chris Johnson did in this system last year. Now, I know we got Whisenhunt coming in, but still behind the same offensive line. The offensive line is actually better when they drafted Tyler Lewan out of Michigan. So I like Sankey. He's going to be able to catch the ball. Obviously, he's got to be able to pass protect to be able to stay on the field for 3 downs. But I personally am on Sankey. I'm not enamored with that round 5 ADP. I'd like to get him a little bit later than that. But remember, a lot of people hated on Gio Bernard last year, said he wasn't an every down back. He's too small. He's a 3rd down back, and he paid off dividends. And first running backs typically that come off the board in the draft have a pretty good history, outside of guys like Ronnie Brown. But typically, recently, those running backs have done well. So I'm confident that Sankey will be able to produce.
Interesting. He's one of the guys I'm really curious to see at the end of the year what he's actually done because, people have generally been positive, but, he's just one of those guys. I don't think I've actually drafted him once this year. Speaking of a guy that you're not drafting this year, hopefully, unless something crazy happens and Andre Holmes suddenly turns into Calvin Johnson, it's probably Derek Carr. But in Dynasty Leagues, he's interesting, obviously, just because he has a lot of talent. There was talk he might go in the 1st round. Got a concussion. The only reason I bring this up is, A, concussions freak me out. B, his brother had that same kind of history. Now, mind you, he was behind one of the worst offensive lines in football. But what's your take on Derek Carr?
I think Derek Carr is going to get on the field because Matt Schaub is so bad. I mean, we're seeing that Matt Schaub just cannot throw the ball down the field, and they don't exactly have the best receiving core there. They don't really have a tight end. They've got a trio of running backs that are pretty good. So I think eventually Carr gets on the field this year. I don't think he's going to be fantasy relevant at all. In a dynasty, if you want to stash him, I can understand that, but I'm actually not a big Derek Carr fan. I wasn't a big fan of him at college. I thought he was being inflated. I don't think he was a first-round pick. I think, guys that were out there, I think even on ESPN, were saying that he was probably more like a 4th-rounder. So I just think he got pushed up the board because he was a QB and there was a lot of need.
All right, now I shouldn't even bring this up because the name's escaping me, but the backup quarterback, 4th-round pick, Logan quarterback, VTech. Logan Thomas, thank you very much. Looked really good, and this is a guy that he's built like he looks like Dante Culpepper out there.
Great comp, absolutely perfect comp with Logan. And now he's not as polished as Dante was coming out of UCF, and actually I when I lived in Orlando, I got to see Dante play quite a bit. So here's the thing about Logan Thomas that I would tend to. Look, they drafted him for a reason, and they bypassed needs. They had needs at linebacker. They had needs on the offensive line, and they took Logan Thomas. I think Arians, who's a quarterback guru, saw Thomas and saw him like, this unfinished clay, and he's going to be able to mold him into what he wants. And if you think about it, you got to wonder what was going on at Virginia Tech, and I think we're starting to see that maybe a lot of the faults with Logan Thomas weren't necessarily him and maybe the coaching staff at Virginia Tech.
And you're absolutely right. And you know what? I live in AZ now, so I just moved from Canada. Never had an NFL team. Go Montreal Alouettes. But, so I'm kind of rooting for them. And, when I was talking about him, a lot of guys were, But you know what? You're absolutely right. Bruce Arians in that right, he might be kind of the best guy to pull the talent out of him.
And look, if something were to happen to Carson Palmer, he's getting up there in age. If something were to happen, the offensive line's got issues right now. And, if Palmer gets hurt and Thomas is thrown in, they're probably going to go Drew Stanton. But if somehow Thomas gets on the field, he's going to throw to Fitzgerald and he's going to throw to Michael Floyd. He's got Andre Ellington coming out of the backfield. So that's a pretty good supporting cast to fall into, probably better than what any other backup QB would have.
Love the skilled position players this year in Arizona. This is Razzball Radio, Fantasy Sports Network. We're going to go draft in Charlotte with some heavy hitters. Tomorrow, DC and B more back on the road.